Right, unemployment, of course, is soaring in South Africa, and with Eskom struggling to keep the lights on, more jobs could be lost. Labour Union Cosatu says that the energy crisis is crippling our economy. At a gathering in Cape Town, the president said that labour unions were willing to engage government on the way forward. Well, to discuss, we're now joined by General Secretary of Trade Union Federation Cosatu, that's Bheki Ntshalintshali, and we will be joined hopefully soon by the General Secretary of the SA Federation of Trade Unions, Zwelinzima Vavi. Mr. Ntshalintshali, thank you. The President, Cyril Ramaphosa, has hinted several times that he wants to address the nation. He hinted again today, speaking to black industrialists. So you're saying that you're open to engagement. Has there been any engagement thus far with Cosatu?
Good evening, and good evening to the viewers at home. We had met with the President, I think yesterday, where he indicated the initiatives that they are trying to put in place to ensure that there's a security or energy security supply. So we have met with him as the first phase of the meeting, but it will need more other meetings if we're to succeed.
Well, can you tell us what those initiatives are, and are you happy with them?
Look, any proposals that the government has made in the past, they've not managed to honor them in practice. So some of the issues that he is raising are the issues that we ourselves have been raising, the issues of making the procurement possible, to make resources available for Eskom to be able to procure whatever is required, and we oppose the issues of Eskom privatization. So those are among the issues of getting the right skills back to Eskom and to ensure that the stolen money are recovered. So those are some of the issues. We have come up with Eskom social compact. So as a trade union, we always try to engage, but whether the promises that government is making will be realized is another matter. We know where the problem started, and I think in our engagement with them, there's an acceptance that it was a deliberate move taken sometimes back to privatize Eskom. So even now, the attempt to incite people about the failure of the state and that the private sector might be the savior here is something that we reject, and we want to engage everybody to reject that notion.
Mr. Ntshalintshali, I have to ask for clarification, because some people have said this, that Eskom has been deliberately mismanaged so that in the end privatization could be put forward as the solution. You said there was some agreement around that. Does the President agree with that? That it's been deliberately mismanaged for the sake of privatization?
No.
Okay.
The issue that the President have accepted is that the government, when they were told that they needed to invest in Eskom, they did not invest in Eskom.
Yes, sure. And this goes back all the way to 2008 or earlier. Mr. Vavi has joined us. Thank you very much. Has SAFTU been part of any engagements with government around the plans? And what do you think the President should announce? We are expecting some sort of announcement very soon.
We have not been consulted. We have been marginalized. We normally regard ourselves as part of the group of the excluded. Trade unions, civil society, mass formations that are organizing our people on a daily basis against the current crisis unfolding in our country. So there is no appetite of the government to speak to the opponents of neoliberalism, austerity program, and capitalism. And so we know, yes, we have not been included in those discussions. We know that the president is more likely to act unilaterally and will regard the consultations at NEDLAC as sufficiently representative of the voices of all workers in this country, even though that the truth is to the contrary. He will regard the consultation with the civil society in NEDLAC as sufficient, even though he knows that the great numbers of mass formations are outside that NEDLAC arrangement. So that's where we are in relation to the consultation. And we expecting nothing revolutionary from the president, even though he said something very funny in the SACP Congress that is considering a suggestion that has been made that there must be a second utility to provide electricity in the country. And when we said that, every South African was saying, oh no, where does this comrade live? They have ballooned the prices of Kusile Metunsa and by billions and billions of overrun, both in terms of time and budgeting. And they are in debt to the tune of R500 billion in Eskom. And where do this idea now that they think that they can manage another institution when they are in government that is actually a graveyard for all state-owned enterprises, be it PRASA, Transnet, SAA, Petro SA, Dinel, you can name them all. Nobody takes the ANC government as serious when they say that they still committed into an active role for a state that can lead development and crowd in private investment.
That was reportedly an idea put forward by Minister Bheki Ntshalintshali. Mr. Ntshalintshali, what does Cosatu think of an Eskom 2? I mean, as Mr. Vavi points out, Eskom 1 has its own issues. And in fact, Eskom 1 is talking about what you were talking about, the red tape, grinding it to a halt so it can't do what it needs to do. Mr. Ntshalintshali, in fact, is the one who can commission new energy, not Eskom. So what do you think about it, Eskom 2?
Our view is that when you refer to the renewable energy, the state must play a role in the renewable energy. It can't be given to the private sectors because we know what private sector can produce. Eskom, as it stands now, is a coal-fired power station. And there is a great move that we needed to be going to the renewable energy, and which we accept that we need to go there. What we cannot accept is that role of producing a green economy, the green economy, the low carbon emission has to be given to the hands of the private sectors. Within the state, when it comes to energy supply, should be involved in dealing.
But may I ask you why? May I ask you why the state should hold that? Because as I understand, separating out the company will ensure that distribution and transmission is still in the hands of the state. And that's where you want the state to ensure that energy goes to poor rural townships, that energy is distributed equitably across the country. Why can't private players that are good at producing wind and solar energy help by just generating fuel and throwing it onto the grid to help all of us?
The first thing is that the IPP are subsidized by the state, as we know. They are very expensive. They are selling the electricity or the energy to Eskom at a very high price when Eskom has then to subsidize them. We disagree with that kind of an approach that Eskom should be subsidizing private sectors who are making profit on this thing. We think the state should be playing that role to be able to produce electricity at an affordable price.
Mr. Vavi, what do you think? We haven't built new power stations for years. Medupi and Kusile were a disaster, but they are online now. Why can't private players be involved in just renewable energy and just that generation side of things?
Let's repeat and I think emphasize what Bheki Ntshalintshali is saying correctly. This government had a clear intention of privatizing Eskom. in that it refused to invest in the infrastructure, even when it was advised by the senior executives of Eskom to do so. It missed that opportunity in 1997 under the presidency of Nelson Mandela, and they were warned that if they don't invest in the new infrastructure, in the ailing infrastructure inherited from the apartheid regime, we will begin to see load shedding in 10 years. And that's already what is happening now.
Mr. Vavi,
now,
I understand that.
Eskom,
sorry, for the sake of time, I understand the history and you've raised that issue. But where we are now, I mean, individuals are saying, why can't I, if I can produce enough energy, actually add it to the grid and help our problem? Many calling for the lowering of the barriers to let everybody that can produce energy. So why are you opposed to that side of things, the generational side of things, private players and even private companies and private individuals getting involved?
We believe that energy, water, healthcare, education, clean air, and those type of things are fundamental rights that only the state must provide, but it must be an efficient, corrupt-free state.
But it's not. You've said it's not.
To the citizen.
You've said it's not. So what should we do?
Corrupt. Instead of throwing out a baby with the bathwater, change this government. And in its place, install a government that is going to prioritize the basic needs of our people for clean energy that is cheap, renewables that will be led by a company like Eskom to deliver cheaper electricity. We are absolutely sure, based on international experience, that if we were to make a mistake judged by the standards of the ANC government, hand over energy to the private players, the people in this country, in particular the poor, will pay very dearly as they are paying now in Australia, with more expensive electricity, unreliable electricity, and where the profiteers will be smiling to the banks all the time at the expense of collapsing the economy that requires cheap electricity.
All right, we're also paying a lot. We've run out of time, but Mr. Ntshalintshali, in 20 seconds, are you going to, as Cosatu, move support over to the SACP, and will this be one of the pivotal factors for the next election?
Those are the decisions of the Congress. We're not in the Congress as yet.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, both gentlemen, tonight. That was General Secretary of Trade Union Federation Cosatu, Bheki Ntshalintshali, and General Secretary of the SA Federation of Trade Unions, Zwelinzima Vavi.